Hi guys, today I wanted to do a quick video on the subject of whether or not commentators ever script lines. Now I'm not talking about the intro at the top of the program when you might have something scripted to work with timings, be it team news or specific pictures, or because you've got someone in your ear that demands this, that or the other. I'm talking about during live play, when a goal goes in. You know what it's like, occasionally you hear commentary and you think, that sounded very neat and tidy, that sounded very polished. I wonder whether they had prepared something in advance. Now, in my experience, the vast majority of commentators don't prepare anything. I have heard some anecdotes of people maybe having a scripted line for a specific match situation. The reason this video idea came to mind is because around about this time last year, I did Cagliari against Milan. It was the first start for Zlatan Ibrahimovic in his second spell at Milan. And naturally, as a commentator, I wouldn't be doing my job properly if I didn't already start to anticipate and envisage possible storylines. Now, the big storyline at the Sardinia Arena, or Arena if you prefer, last year was that Zlatan Ibrahimovic could possibly score for the first time in rossoneri colours during his second spell. So you start to think about what you might say if that were to come to pass.
This is Theo Hernandez, Ibrahimovic! There it is! On the first start of his second spell, Ibrahimovic once again the difference maker. 38 years and 100 days old. The Swede, absolutely timeless.
And I have to say I'm slightly disappointed. This is the closest thing I think I've got in recent times to pre-preparing a line. Over the course of my research, I gleaned the information. I discovered that Zlatan Ibrahimovic that day was 38 years and 100 days old. And I was so pleased with myself, which if you think about it, is not particularly relevant statistically. It's quite an odd number. Yes, 100 is a round number, but it's not like it was his 39th birthday. So typically, when we refer to the number of years and days of a goal scorer, it's ordinarily when we're talking about precociousness. It's when we're talking about potentially the youngest ever scorer for X or Y club or in X or Y competition. And the reason we break it down into days is because typically there's someone that already holds the record, their record is broken, and so then it becomes a case of, he wasn't just 17, he was 17 and 157 days old. So to then use that same image, 38 and 100 days old, was rather bizarre. I was slightly disappointed with myself, and in hindsight I thought, you need to be more spontaneous, you need to be more natural. Don't try and force things in just because you've prepared them. And that's a very good rule of thumb in general for football commentary. It also calls to mind another cringeworthy moment I had when I was commentating. 2014, I was thinking about what I might say in the shower prior to a commentary. It was Antonio Totò Di Natale, who was on the verge of scoring his 200th goal for Udinese in his 400th appearance. And I came up with this ludicrous line in the shower and then decided to trot it out on commentary. And when I think back, it is absolutely cringeworthy. I've tried to find the clip somewhere. It seems to have been expunged from the records, which is probably a good thing. That's a bonus, I would suggest. But ultimately I said, get up off your sofa and give this man a round of applause. I mean, it's a preposterous thing. The commentator trying to prompt a spontaneous standing ovation. So that's another lesson. And from that day on, I vowed to myself, never try and be too clever, never try and script or prepare a goal call because it won't come off. You need to be natural, you need to be spontaneous, trust yourself to call the big moment. And I have to say, I did that twice in recent times, and I've simply called to mind these two examples because they actually were commented on YouTube. I know what you're saying, who would give any credence to anything that's written on YouTube?
I'm 10 years old. TV's my life.
I'm 34 years old. YouTube's my life. No, all jokes aside, it is nice when you do get praise. Praise is few and far between, it must be said. And I would say typically a good commentator is heard and not seen. They blend into the background. They're a bit like a good referee. You don't really notice they're there. So ordinarily, no news is good news. But when people do quote your lines, it is very gratifying. And I'd just like to take two examples. So I'll start with the opening weekend of last season, so the 2019-2020 campaign, Inter against Lecce. I say the opening weekend, it was actually the Monday night game, so let's call it round one or match day one for those that are devotees of UEFA jargon. And Inter hosted Lecce, and it was sort of a perfect storm for me from a broadcasting perspective. I had just gone freelance again, having worked for Inter TV for 18 months, so there wasn't a team in world football that I was more clued up on, and that just gave me greater confidence. I had access to all the possible resources and all of the possible information imaginable. There were lots of subplots to the game. Antonio Conte's first match in charge, Romelu Lukaku's debut, Conte up against Lecce, his hometown club, and so on and so forth. And Inter produced an almost flawless performance. 4-0 win, clean sheet, and the goals were just one after another. Lukaku scored on his Nerazzurri bow, and Antonio Candreva scored an absolute stunner to round things off. And this was a commentary line that got picked up again by the comments on YouTube. I was quite happy with it at the time, but if I'm completely honest, it came about because I was slightly behind play. I wasn't as up with play as I ordinarily would like to be. I think I tried to say one line too many, and it nearly caught me out. So here's the goal call.
Candreva, he loves to shoot. That's a long way out! But it doesn't matter! Antonio Candreva puts the icing on the cake!
So yes, just to break it down, ordinarily I think I would have just preferred to have said Candreva, let's fly from distance, but because I tried to get two lines in there, I was slightly behind play, which meant I held that last line. It's a long way out. And then thankfully I came up with the spontaneous payoff line to make it work. And so I was very pleased with that because it was spontaneous. I didn't have too much time to think. And you need to trust yourself as a broadcaster to find the right words at the right time. What John Champion neatly described as lightning in a bottle in a recent podcast that I heard. Although I must say that I'm a long way off any sort of comparison to any of those most iconic lines. But all we can do is talk about our own experiences. And then there was another goal call that I was reasonably pleased with recently, which once again got quoted. So, you know, you've done a reasonably good job, I would suggest. Here it is.
Muriel. Still Luis Muriel. It's wonderful. That is a fabulous finish. Why start him when he does this off the bench time and time again? He doesn't need long. And he doesn't need much in the way of space by the looks of it either.
So what I would say in terms of analysis here, first of all, you need the backstory. Luis Muriel was earning this tag as a super sub. He was developing a reputation for coming off the bench and scoring goals. It was becoming almost ridiculous, the ease with which he was able to find the net as a substitute. And Gianpiero Gasperini was maximising that, the Atalanta coach. So I could have naturally gone straight in for the number of minutes per goal that he requires as a substitute because his strike rate is absolutely outstanding. I'm sure I did have that information to hand, but maybe I didn't necessarily have it right there in front of me, which was probably a good thing in hindsight because it meant that I just called the action. I reacted naturally and spontaneously to it, and I was quite pleased with the play on words I was able to produce, the difference between time and space, how much time it takes him to score a goal off the bench and how much space is required for him to get a shot off half a yard. And that's a nod to the French Football Federation and their excellent group of coach developers who are always talking and insisting about the notions of time and space and just how important they are in football. That's just as an aside. One final thing, something of a hybrid solution I would suggest. There's nothing wrong with thinking about how you might say something. I wouldn't necessarily say script something, but when we do a live commentary prior to the event, we're required to do a sound check. And as well as just talking normally and spontaneously as I am now, albeit I have a slightly different broadcasting voice, we are also asked to do a mock goal call, if you will, because naturally the levels go up and down, the more emotion and power there is in your voice and the more excitement there is on the pitch. And so what I think you can do there is you can arguably use that mock goal call during the sound check to maybe try something out. And that's certainly something I did recently when it was Benevento against Napoli. So I think on my sound check there, I commentated on a mock goal for Roberto Insigne. And then as luck would have it, he ended up scoring the opening goal in that game. So I think I'd almost had a bit of a dummy run, something of a dress rehearsal there prior to actually calling the goal live. So I hadn't scripted anything per se, but I'd already got some of my thoughts out in the open and I was able to almost select them and choose the right ones. So just some thoughts about whether or not commentators script lines. I would say 99.9% of cases we don't. Anytime I have tried to do so in the past, 2014 with Di Natale, it didn't come off. Last year with Ibrahimovic, wasn't the worst goal call in the world, but that one line, that curious image of about 38 years and 100 days was certainly one I'd like to take back. Unfortunately, it's not golf. We don't get mulligans. Then again, professionals don't get mulligans either. So you just have to roll with it and then try and keep going, plough on and find a better line. And then sometimes it comes off. Antonio Candreva and Luis Muriel in particular, two that live relatively long in the memory. That's all for me for today. I hope that has once again just cleared up any possible doubts you might have about football commentary, or maybe even if you didn't have them, it can be of interest. Let me know what you think. Let me know of some of the iconic lines that you have enjoyed from some of the biggest names. And let me know what you think about preparation and scripting things in general. As ever, I'm happy to answer any queries. Please give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. Subscribe if you haven't done already, and I'll see you on the next one. Thanks, guys.